This is going to be one of my videos in my extended Bible series, where I delve into the Bible in detail, looking at each section and breaking down the prophecies, the visions, the stories and the accounts with what we know historically and what science has discovered for us, as well as what the Bible itself tells us. If this is the sort of video you're interested in, please like and share it with your friends. The more discussion we have, the better. Any thoughts you have, please leave in the comments. And if you're that sort of person who likes to stay up to date with things, please consider subscribing to the channel. Apart from that, I hope you enjoyed the video.
One thing that people tend to forget about Joseph is that he had dreams about the future. This hasn't come across in a standout way. And so the significance of those dreams can be lost on many. And whilst Any Dream Will Do was a big song in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, it doesn't really represent the dreams as a whole. Now, I'm not a big believer in prophets, fortune tellers, all those who claim to have prophetic dreams, especially as I have had a few dreams that have no chance of coming true. That being said, the fact that Joseph took heed of his dreams and the dreams of others, and it helped him prepare for hard times, suggests there's a strong possibility that these dreams are something more. Trials at the hands of his brothers are also important to mention, since it's also a tale of how he was persecuted and still pulled through in his belief. With that in mind, I'll be looking at this part of the Bible, particularly questioning how close were these dreams to reality? What were the factors that convinced people of their truth? And did his past affect how he used his gift? Needless to say, this is another situation where accounts and oral tales overlapped in this period, as both were common, and therefore this is mostly a mixture of both. But I'm generally taking this as an account because the language is nowhere near descriptive enough for a full-fledged story, and certainly not enough for an oral storyteller to make a song and dance about. Even when compared with the songs from the musical, which gave a better description of the robe in 2 lines of song than a whole verse of the Bible could be bothered to present. If this were a story, the teller or author would have gone into incredible embellishment about the robe and would have given a great description. But I'm just saying ornate and leave it at that. The Hebrew words petonet and pasim, which generally are considered to mean ornate robe, is translated differently in different versions. It can mean anything from long sleeve robe to multicolored coat, or even just striped shirt. All this shows the robe isn't the important thing, and so no one was particularly fussed about writing about it. If it were a plot device, it would have had far more detail given to it. Since it's merely mentioned, it's not really important, and so was glossed over. Instead, let's get into dreams. Dreams Joseph had started way back before his brothers sold him, and he shared to his brothers and father. We were binding sheaves of wheat out in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose up and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered round mine and bowed down to it. This was interpreted as Joseph being more likely to rule, and this had improved the feelings of his brothers towards him. Since the order of the verses show he already had the robe, this might have been presumed as him pursuing his goal to become the patriarch, head of his 10 older brothers. Since Jacob supplanted his own brother Esau as patriarch by tricking their father Isaac, this wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility. So you can see why his brothers reacted so. This was only compounded when he told them of his next dream. Then he had another dream, and told it to his brothers. Listen, I had another dream. This time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. When Jacob rebukes him, it seems he's understanding his brothers more than Joseph. But since he keeps the matter in mind, this again seems to be rubbing it in for his brothers. This time it's not just the brothers who seem to be bowing down, but the parents as well. Though since it's focusing on Joseph's parents and not his brothers, it could also be implied he was wishing death on his brothers' mothers. Remember, Jacob had children by 4 different wives, and I'm using them loosely here. We also haven't checked the translation of rebukes, but I'm going with this idea at the moment. Strangely enough, even when Joseph was sold into slavery, he wasn't treated poorly by his captors and was given a good position in the household of an Egyptian official. The Lord was with Joseph, so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes, and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. Now, I know some people are going to say, if the Lord was with him, why did he let it happen? A good question, and not the subject. So I'll simply say, because he wouldn't have been the person he became otherwise. Considering that he was given such a high position in the household, being a foreign slave, shows that God was aiding him, and was willing to render him some luck in some places. Granted, due to his refusal to bed the master's wife, despite her insistence that he joins her. She does accuse him of attempted rape and has him cast into the dungeons. But humans are not known for their godly nature and tend to act vindictively on those who deny them their whims. Even then, Joseph gets put in charge of caring for the other prisoners. A far less cushy job than what he originally had, but was better than just total incarceration. Also, this position allowed him to visit two people who also had dreams, the cupbearer and the baker. The chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. He said to him, "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me. On the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put it in his hand." Joseph was asked to interpret the dream, and he interprets it to mean the Pharaoh will restore the cupbearer to his former position in 3 days' time. Now, I was wondering if there was any difference in the translation, so I looked it up, but no, all translations say the same. All seems good. He also took the chance to ingratiate himself with the imprisoned cupbearer, asking him to remember him and ask the Pharaoh for leniency, a useful thing to have. The next dream was just as strange. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favourable interpretation, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for the Pharaoh. But the birds are eating them out of the basket on my head." This one wasn't interpreted in a happy way. Joseph said it is to mean that in 3 days' time, the baker would be executed by being impaled on a pole for the birds to eat. Pretty grisly death, but remember, Christ was crucified on a cross, so not exactly a pretty form of execution at that time. I presumed somewhere would be a difference in translation, saying the birds were actually vultures, certainly for this second. But I took a look, and none of the translations were modernized to say they were birds of any other kind, just plain old birds. So we'd have to interpret vultures or blackbirds or whatever birds. Interestingly, translations differ on the method of execution. Some say impalement on the pole, others say hanging from said pole or from the gallows, others beheading, then leaving the head or body on display. Whatever the baker did to offend the Pharaoh must be serious to warrant such an act. But then again, many monarchs have made power plays just like that, just to prove a point, and who's really in charge, and what could happen to people who didn't show the proper respect. Either way, both interpretations came true. The cupbearer returned to his post, and the baker was executed in the exact manner suggested. Far from being lauded as a soothsayer of high renown, Joseph was forgotten by the cupbearer, possibly because he had just seen a fellow prisoner die at his master's whim, and didn't want to push his luck. As a result, it was 2 full years until something happened that prompted him to mention Joseph. Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed upon the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came out of the Nile, and stood beside those on the riverbank. The cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Then the Pharaoh woke up. That is quite a nightmare to have. It makes my night horrors of the empty child seem like nothing. And believe me, I was completely terrified. This wasn't something to be taken lightly. Hopefully, this wouldn't come true. It appears that he shrugs it off as a nightmare and heads back to sleep. Fell asleep again and had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Then the Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. The fact that biblical authors were not afraid to say he woke up, it was all a dream, shows that adding dreams into the narrative wasn't beyond their line of work, but they just had to pick the right dreams, or at least mention they were dreams. I mention this because Jacob wrestling with the stranger who could have been God would have been a very good thing to have as a dream, and yet Jacob woke up with a sore hip, showing it wasn't a dream. This would disturb any man, and their similarity doesn't seem lost on him. And so they struck in his mind the next day. He duly sent for his magi and wise men, but they couldn't make head or tail of them. But this is where the cupbearer pipes up, mentioning how Joseph interprets his and the baker's dreams and was correct on both accounts. This prompts the Pharaoh to call Joseph to him. Very important. Joseph was duly called and told the dreams. He said they were the same dream and meant the same thing. The 7 cows are 7 years. The 7 heads of good wheat are 7 years. This is one and the same dream. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. 7 years of plenty followed by drought is clearly important for the Pharaoh to know, hence why it was sent in 2 forms. Joseph knew this, and went further than just interpreting, and gave advice which wasn't asked for. He suggested someone should be put in charge and take control to gather up the grain. More bizarrely, the Pharaoh not only took his advice, but made him the one to put it into action. Granted, it could be that he was more interested in hedging his bets and giving him the job in case he was wrong, and then he could put all the blame onto him. But considering he was made second in command with the jewels, chariot, and name to show for it, if Joseph was lying, quite a bit of the blame for the hoo-ha would still come back and bite the Pharaoh. He put quite a lot of trust in his Hebrew slave, and also got one of the priests to give his daughter in marriage to Joseph. Just so to show that being a good servant, no matter the job or how one felt about the employer, having them as your referee is often a good way to get an early promotion. And there's not much higher promotion than going from Hebrew prison slave to second in command to the Pharaoh. More on the rest of the story next time, but let's take a look at the question. How close were the dreams to the reality? Since we are given the interpretations pretty quickly, and the story is quite well known, we can see they seem to be pretty close for the most part, with each dream being almost tailor-made for the person dreaming it. The bearer squeezing wine into a cup to give to the pharaoh, and the baker doing a basket of bread on his head. Each one came true in its own way. But since the pharaoh's own professional wise men didn't know what the dreams meant, it implies they weren't that clear to begin with. Add that to the way people tell them, and it's near impossible to get an understanding of what they could mean. It's possible the soothsayers of Egypt were far too focused on larger metaphors than interpreting the imagery of the dream itself. Often just the image of the dream is enough to give you an idea, as far as I'm aware. What were the factors that convinced people of their truth? For Joseph's dreams, they didn't have anything other than images of things bowing down before him, and nothing was given as a time scale. Since it was a far future thing, and probably wasn't even going to happen at that point, due to the brothers not being particularly vindictive at that time, no time scale had to be given, and so it was left open. The cupbearer and baker's dreams, on the other hand, did give a time scale in some form. The cupbearer had 3 bunches of grapes, and the baker had 3 bread baskets. That was given and fulfilled in near perfect timing. Since they both had the dream in the dungeons and gave the dreams to Joseph the next morning, presumably, the timing was significant enough for each dream to mean something by that time. The fact that one was a good outcome and the other was bad further gives me the impression that knowing the future doesn't always help. It points out that it's not the dream, it's not a dream of something that's about to happen. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be good, no matter how much you want it to happen like that. So just because you have a wonderful dream and think, oh yes, I want that to happen, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to. And as proven by the Pharaoh, the nightmares can come true as well. Did Joseph's path affect how he used his gift? The answer is yes and no. No, because mentioning his dreams got into trouble with his brothers and pushed him into slavery. Yet he still used his gift and used it to interpret the dreams of not only the baker, but also the Pharaoh. But yes, because he was effective at his job, and so was given a better position than many slaves, being first the then equivalent of a butler, then an inmate caregiver, then finally steward to the realm with power, influence, and the approval of the Pharaoh himself. For a Hebrew slave, his rise was quite something, but because his gift was being used to help the people, it was quite In effect, it gave him, effectively his past, caught up with him and gave him the conviction to carry on. His past didn't affect him emotionally, no, but it gave him the drive and the position to use his gift to the best effect. There's a bit of a ramble, but hopefully the point gets across. All that being said, I'm not sold on prophets and dream interpretation. I can't deny having occasional deja vu moments and thinking of dreams I had and how that could be something I saw in a dream. But I have many more dreams I wish could come true, but I know full well that it's not going to happen at all. I know people who have had weird dreams that seem to capture someone's personality. I could mention one, but I'll make this video far too long. But again, I've heard others that were just plain weird and make absolutely no sense. Again, could talk about that. Don't have much time. It's possible Joseph knew which dreams were prophetic and which weren't, but since I don't have that gift, I'm not convinced either way. Despite that, though, Joseph still pushed through and trusted his dreams and their interpretations. I may consider myself more rational than people who claim to have this gift, but I don't pretend to understand that sort of thing. So whilst I may take a dig at people for having this belief in dreams, I will say this. Those of you who think they have prophetic dreams or even some prophetic gift, don't be afraid to note them down and see if you can interpret them. I for one will take it with a grain of salt and recommend others do the same. But if you think it's worthwhile, mention it and see what happens. The important thing is, don't be afraid to be wrong and trust that it's right. And that it will be heard by the right person. I don't know about this gift personally. But if you think you have it, by all means exercise it. I plead that you don't become arrogant with it though. Don't assume that just because you dreamed it means it's definitely going to happen. Don't assume you're always going to be right. Allow yourself to be wrong at times. Ultimately, Joseph used his gift for the benefit of all and helped the people of Egypt no end. If you have such a gift, share it with people. And don't be afraid to let God work through you.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share and subscribe. Until next time, thanks for watching and God bless.